Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting this evening. It's the third meeting of the 145th Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas. And the fourth meeting of the 145th Council. Yes, that's correct. Okay, any disclosures of interest from any of the members? Seeing none, we'll go on to minutes.
I have a motion that the minutes of the meeting held on January the 27th, 2025 be confirmed.
Peters.
Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Council will now resolve itself into committee of the whole to deal with this following business. First committee is strategic direction and development. First item relates to the St. Thomas Urban Design Guidelines final report. We have Martina Bronstein from Dillon Consulting with us this evening to make a PowerPoint presentation.
Great. Just waiting for the technology.
City Hall bell was a little fast tonight, Your Worship.
It was cold, so I wanted to get the 5 o'clock bells out of the way. Martina, good to have you with us tonight, and we're going to hand the floor over to you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, it's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's really wonderful to be here tonight. I will present if you give me a minute to pull it up. Share. And if I could just get a confirmation that you are seeing my screen.
Yes, I can. And it is on all of our screens. Perfect.
Okay. And is it in full presentation mode?
Now you got it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, as mentioned, my name is Martina Brownstein. I am an urban designer and from Dillon Consulting, and we've been working with the city and the community for quite some time to come to this really important moment, which is to present to you the citywide urban design guidelines. So I will provide and make this very brief, a project overview, and then really just kind of provide a bit of a summary on what are urban design guidelines and the lens that we looked through for this project, and then how did we come up with the urban design guidelines that are specific for St. Thomas. And what is really important to note is that these are city-wide urban design guidelines, which sets a tone and alignment with all of the official plan policies and community building and as well as the strategic plan, zoning, and other guiding regulations and guidelines and plans in the city. So the overall purpose really was to look at as the city is growing and it's expanding its boundaries, that there are different forms of development that have started to occur already in the city, and there's different pressures for growth, and the city continues to evolve its industry and its sort of identity. So through this lens, we really look to provide the city-wide strategy and vision for how some of these challenges and opportunities can really strengthen the growth in the city in a way that reflects what St. Thomas is about. So we looked at from environmental lens, sustainability, streetscapes, parks, open spaces, and then in general, just creating healthier, more accessible and equitable communities. So this was a 3-phase project that started in 2022 and was in sort of tandem at the time with the official plan review process. We also then had, from the initial launch, just understanding the vision, the opportunities and challenges. The project then moved into identifying key directions, and then drafting of the draft urban design guidelines, and then what we are presenting to you today. There was community engagement involved. So we had a virtual open house in summer 2023, and then as well as virtual open house in spring 2024 to present the draft guidance. And the open house in 2023 was to define the vision and the principles with the community and stakeholders. So what we heard was really clear that there was a need and support for urban design guidelines, that the vision and design principles should really be based around accessibility and inclusion, environmental sustainability, gathering spaces and having more public spaces and connected into the city's trail system, looking at culture and diversity and really celebrating St. Thomas's, the arts and culture and the history and its beautiful heritage, and then promoting high standards of urban design. So that spoke to the design excellence and seeing projects, as you already have started to see in the downtown area, but really seeing high quality design that starts to provide an expectation and also pride from the community that this is our city, and that this is what we should expect in our city. We also heard that the design guidance was further needed for infill, as there were some concerns how this was happening at the city at the time, as well as this transition between different densities of housing. And also the pedestrian comfort, safety, and looking at accessibility on all of the city roads, and how to accommodate the pedestrian kind of as the first user of the road. So in understanding kind of how the urban design guidelines, so taking this feedback from the community, looking at precedents, looking at the best practices in urban design when it comes to the design of cities of scales such as St. Thomas, we really need to kind of go back to the basics. So what are we trying to achieve? What is urban design? And that really is a multidisciplinary approach to city building, because it really looks at from the public realm to the private realm, and then the relationships between those and the people that use and occupy and celebrate in those spaces. It really is about describing the features that define the character of the street, the neighborhood, community, and how to achieve sort of an outcome that makes the community livable, that makes the community showcase its identity. So what are then following urban design guidelines? Really, that is the tool that provides the framework for this functional design that looks at placemaking opportunities and considerations, and how to invest in both public and private lands, and provide that direction towards that future development that provides the sort of the guidelines for what the future will be and can be through following the guidance. So we just show in the screen, for example, the guidelines that we're presenting tonight. There's lots of visuals that provide some of the characteristics and some of the features of built form, of site design, of landscape design, orientation on the site, and then also at some scales, more of a block design type of illustration. But we already know that St. Thomas has already in its rich heritage, but also more recent enhancements, invested in that public realm, and that it's already started to shape various both economic and growth that you have seen in your city. And these types of investments really do promote a healthier lifestyle. And for example, all of the work that has been already completed on Talbot Street. So it really, there's pieces already implemented, and there is more room to continue advancing these objectives and principles. So the public realm are the owned spaces by by the city, and they belong to everybody. So we designed them in a way that feels inclusive, and is inherently inclusive in the design, universal design, and other standards. And the private realm, which is another aspect where we looked at through the guidelines, is to look at that specific site development. So whether it's commercial, residential, industrial, um, there's specific guidance to those land uses as well. So the urban design guidelines look like this. That is the report, and it really just provides an introduction and kind of how to use the document, provides some high-level opportunity areas to think through, and to implement further through the official plan and other plans in the future. And then it does break down the urban design guidelines through both through the public realm and the private realm, as described earlier. So the vision for the overall urban design at the city, as supported by the official plan, is that it is that St. Thomas is committed to promoting a consistent and high standard of urban design for all development in the city, and that this really responds to this growing and thriving community that you see before you, and we continue to forecast in the future, and that having a sustainable, inclusive, and celebrated community does start with creating the spaces that enable that experience, and that each block in the city provides a puzzle piece to the larger, greater public good in the public realm and the private realm. So the design principles, there was 8 of them listed here. They provide the best practices, the best principles that we researched and from practice, as well as really these principles are also very well vetted with the community on what is the direction that the community wanted to see. So placemaking, making it more pedestrian oriented and safe, and integrating more green, more ecological landscapes, more trees, and improvement of urban forest cover. Um, just the quality of materials and building design, having development be more sustainable, as well as, again, highlighting and preserving the heritage that is already really rich in St. Thomas. And then the last 2 are about natural heritage, which again is something that is a beautiful feature and asset in St. Thomas, as well as the accessibility. So the implementation of the urban design guidelines is sort of multiple, it has multiple layers. It is through the city council and staff. It is through the development industry, as they will look through the guidelines and see what the vision is for the city, external agency and communities, and of course the general public. So the document has been written and illustrated in a way to really allow all of these audiences to have a read through and a unified interpretation of what how to implement the overall vision and design principles. And that brings me to the end of my presentation.
Super. Thank you. I'm going to ask council if they have any questions. Is that all right?
Yes, yes, please.
Councillor Clark?
Thanks. Martina, I was kind of disappointed in the report. After 2 years, I thought it would be a little bit less generic and a little bit more St. Thomas specific. And I'm just wondering if you could talk to that a little bit. To me, if you ripped off the front page that says St. Thomas Citywide Urban Designs, you could replace it with Brantford, Owen Sound, North Bay, Sudbury, any small mid-size city. I can't argue with any of the guidelines that you've put in place because I think we would agree they're all what's needed. But other than a couple mentions about Center Street or Talbot Street, it seemed like it could be any city in Ontario that's looking to update its plan because of the change in provincial policy. And so I'm just wondering how you would answer that question, how going forward, even the recommendations, I guess, to me were kind of generic and not very St. Thomas focused, that they would apply to any town or city that was trying to update. So I just thought it would be a little bit more St. Thomas specific.
Sure. So I could answer from the project approach and the open houses, like from the project the way the project was structured, and also in alignment with back in 2022 with the official plan update, there were quite a few bold moves. So we're kind of thinking already like 2 to 3 years ago in establishing these urban design guidelines and making sure that they were supportive and sort of aligned and congruent with the official plan updates at the time. I think in general, urban design guidelines, when we look at them citywide, we do look at best practices because there are components, and I think the section on opportunities really speaks to St. Thomas specific opportunities and identifying kind of the key clusters that were then later integrated through the guidance. But the best practices for urban design are kind of like are an industry best practice. So I think when we talk about site specific, and we're trying to make it general enough so that it applies to, let's say, any site, any, commercial site, but we're also trying to keep it, not too prescriptive because these are citywide guidelines. I think there is a fine balance of how much to keep them general enough so that it could apply to different types of projects within each land use category. So in my experience, the guidelines, although there is some repetition from one to the other, if you were to compare, there are nuances that do make it very St. Thomas centric. So if it would be interesting to kind of to have that conversation with you, or to look at it more closely on how that was integrated.
Sure, that would be great. Do you have any of those examples in mind, kind of off the cuff?
I don't have the report in front of me. I'm sorry, I'm working on one screen, so I don't have it to point you to specific sections. But perhaps we could follow up with some of those highlights in the report, if that's okay with you.
Certainly.
That would be great. Thanks. Yeah.
And I see Lou at the podium. Let's see if, Mr. Pompili?
Through your worship. No, I'm just going to provide some general comments. I think Martina's kind of hit it on the head there. But the document, where we were before we started this process was we had nothing that we could point to in St. Thomas when we had with regards to urban design, what the vision is, what the expectation is, what the goals are and the principles are for achieving good urban design within the community. We're very fortunate in St. Thomas that we have some really great local developers that do a fine job with the sites and the work that they do. But as we're growing, we're seeing that we're getting a lot of interest from outside of the community. So this document does give us now a tool that we can present to developers, to builders, to residents in terms of what the vision, what the principles are, what the expectations are when they go and set out to develop and build in this community. So this does give us that. It was something that we were really lacking a couple of years ago, and it was put together the broad principles, the broad vision with input from stakeholders throughout the consultation period that we had. So, and one last thing that I want to say, this is like a living and breathing document. So it's a document that we can add to, amend, and change as we grow, as we go through our next phase of wrapping up our official plan review, and when we get into a new zoning bylaw. This document is a guideline document to that, and it's one that can evolve and adapt to changes as we go forward. So I just wanted to make those comments. And one of the main things with this, when we sat out, we were very transparent. We weren't trying to create a document here that was going to be prescriptive, that was going to be a big hammer that said you shall, you must. And the province has really taken a lot of those powers away. This is a document that sort of helps to point out what the vision, what the goals are, and what the expectations are, so that when we're reviewing applications for new development, whether they're greenfield development or intensification development, we can communicate what the goals, the visions, and the expectations are.
Okay. Councillor Baldwin Sands, and then Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. First, thank you very much for the presentation. And Lou, you'll probably be wanting to come back to the podium. I'd like to thank Councillor Clark for his comments as well, because mine are pretty much similar. I too was looking for greater detail. Inside the report, it talked about design guidelines for older areas of the city. So I too was looking for, pinpointing maybe some of the intensification projects, vacant land strategy, how the private and public sector were involved with this, but yet there was no feedback from them in the report. So I would have liked to have seen those pieces, especially after a 2-year of studying it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, just a question to Lou, if I may. With this urban design project, is this going to be like not having buildings built in community settings, which happened on Miller Street? Like, does that gives us the opportunity to say to them, these are the designs that we're really wanting in our neighborhoods? Because I'm telling you, I got an implement shed that was built to look like an apartment building, and it's really a horrible looking building in my neighborhood. Very disappointed, and I know we couldn't do anything as council because it was, of course, a certain size of the building and the number of units provided, and it was an infill. But again, it's the design of the building that's really, really heartbreaking. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, did you have another?
Just kind of next steps. Just wondered if Lou could outline. He mentioned that now that we have this in place, that it will assist with us updating our bylaws, our zoning bylaws, or I'm just wondering what we will do with it. What are the next steps in terms of let's say how will having this help us with the next infill project? We've got a lot of neighborhoods that have started the process, and people are coming all the time now that the changes from the province are allowing infill. And I'm just wondering, now that we have these guidelines, will we update zoning bylaws? Will there be less chances for people coming to committee of adjustment because they're not happy, or we'll be able to expand kind of on how we do our day-to-day work now?
Mr. Pompili?
Through your worship, I'll try to answer as best I can, and then I'll look to Jim, who's on this call, and Martina, if you can provide some input as well. But generally, this is a guideline document, so it'll be a guiding document listed in our official plan, but it is a guideline document, so that when new developments, whether they're infill developments or greenfield developments, come in, this is a document that the proponent, we will reference this document to the proponents during consultation, and they will have to demonstrate how their development aligns with these guidelines. And they would have to present that to us. And then that's something that we would have to take into consideration, so that now we have something that we can present to proponents in terms of stating this is what the vision is for St. Thomas when it comes to development. So that's a tool that we didn't have before. So this outlines it, and they'll have to demonstrate how it fits, how it aligns. And it's a tool we don't have, we haven't had. So as we develop our official plan, we'll ensure that we'll include this as a guideline document of the official plan, so that it has a little bit more tools and teeth. But it also will help us as we move to the next stages of developing other supporting guideline documents or regulatory documents like the zoning bylaw. They're not one and the same. The zoning bylaw is a regulatory tool. This is more just a tool that outlays what our expectations and goals and visions are for urban design. I don't know if as far as some of those developments that were mentioned earlier, one of the biggest impacts that we've seen in planning lately is some of the developments we spoke to, they're not subject to site plan approval anymore. So we don't really have a mechanism where we can play a bigger role in terms of what the final outcome and design of a building would be that we did before. We could avail ourselves to the site plan process for some developments like the one that you mentioned, Councillor Gibson. So this helps, but it doesn't help. It helps in terms of having those proponents know what the expectations and the goals are of the city and of council as we go forward. So I don't know, Jim or Martina, if there's any supplemental comments you wanted to make on top of that, I'd welcome them.
If not, I have Councillor Peters with a question. I'll go to you, Councillor Peters. Thanks for joining us online tonight.
Yeah, thanks very much, Your Worship. Well, a number of comments. I guess I'll start with this one. I would certainly put a motion on the floor that this be deferred and referred to staff for further discussion, because I want to hear from parks, I want to hear from engineering, I want to hear more detail from planning and a number of others, developers, the Municipal Heritage Committee, and I could go on. I think that this is yes, it's a guideline document, has been pointed out, but I want to also know how this guideline document meshes with, our strategic plan, with what we're doing with the official plan and zoning look at right now, with our Parks and Rec master plan, with everything that is going on Power Co related. I just think to make a decision tonight and endorse this as this is how it's going to be, I don't support that. I want to hear back from a few others. I want to hear back from staff. If we no longer have the ability under site plan control to deal with an issue like Miller Street, are there other options, staff, that we can look at to ensure that infill in older areas of St. Thomas is going to be compatible? Because I can cite a number that, in my opinion, are not compatible. And if we don't have that ability via site plan now, what other tools do we have available to us? Is it committee of adjustment? We're going to deal with a few issues tonight, including, one regarding offense. So I'd like to know if we've lost site plan approval, is there another way that we can deal with some of these neighborhoods? And the other thing that I think is an important factor in all of this is what does all this cost? There's going to be a cost to developers. which we know is immediately going to be passed on to a buyer. But there's costs for us as a municipality. And, I'd like to know the financial impacts of this. And I guess my final comment would be, where does the secondary plan on the railway lands fit into what has been presented to us tonight? Because I think that is a very important and significant decision that we're going to make is going to be that secondary plan. And I noted with interest that this report that was in front of us is high level. It doesn't get specifics. Martina commented on that. But when I looked at the draft report or a preliminary report that was completed back in, I believe, June of 2024, there were some specific areas that were looked at. So anyway, I think for myself, Your Worship, personally, I have too many questions that I support endorsing this tonight. Thank you.
Lou, on that?
Through you, Your Worship, I mean, whatever the direction is from council, we'll welcome it and we'll act on it. I must say, I'm little set back in terms of some of the comments made. This document has been circulated for comments to staff. We circulated before we finalized it, make sure there was to find out if there was any comments. And specifically, we circulated this, which kind of we were hoping to bring this forward at the end of last year, but we hit some delays. But we specifically circulated it on multiple occasions and the final version, draft version, to various committees, the Downtown Development Board and the Heritage Committee specifically. And there were and it was accepted. There was no feedback or negative comments provided. And again, it was also presented. We had several stakeholder sessions with specific invitations to home builders and developers in the community. So they had an opportunity to provide input. And I think what this document, there was a question about the potential costs. This document, again, it's a guideline document. It's not a regulatory document. So as far as costs to developers, there may be some minor costs, but it's all costs that are in the pursuit of providing long-lasting and well-built community, which is what the main objective of this urban design guideline is. So I welcome direction from council to bring it back or have us recirculate it with staff and with some of these other committees, but we have done that on multiple occasions, and I'm not sure what more we could do. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Wookie and then Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Your Worship. After this explanation from both Martina and Lou, I certainly understand the kind of paradigm of this much better and what it's intended for. So for me, I get it. I understand where we're coming from, that we didn't have anything before. I understand that's not too prescriptive because we'll talk about individual things that come up as they apply to these criteria. So I support this because I believe this is what starts conversations. And I'm, in the end, just a question for Mr. Pompili. If somebody comes to us, I guess, and says, okay, our development clearly does not correspond to like 6 of these 8 principles, what happens then? Lou, if you can explain to me. So what would happen in that case? If this this would be a basis for an appeal that we need this to support an appeal, or is this simply instructive with to start a conversation with developers, say, here's what we're looking for. And I understand that we might not be in the driver's seat in terms of legal power here, but I just want to know kind of how would you make use of this? Is this a tool to say no, or is this a tool to say we'd like to work with you and this is kind of what we want? I guess in that, but I support us approving the document thing.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, that's a great question, and it is more of the latter. And when we started this process, we were very clear that we weren't creating a document that was going to be prescriptive. And the province has taken away a lot of powers when it comes to urban design and, in the interest of, fast tracking development approvals, approving more housing projects. So, but what this does, it does help us in those discussions, in that consultation, to set the framework for what the expectations are for the community. And it allows us to kind of push back and to ask and request for more. And even through council and council's endorsements, we can do that. And there are various steps that we can take to ensure that, or to help push some of those along. We're a community here that offers a lot of incentives when it comes to development throughout the community. So this could impact approvals for things like community improvement funding or other fundings, if there isn't sort of that that alignment with these guidelines. So it does help us in terms of those discussions and those negotiations, in terms of achieving the objectives here, is to have a very well-built city as we move forward.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Lou. So to me, this is just this. We have this as just a framework for discussions is what we need this for. So it's not a free for all, and we can say this is what we want in general. And I mean, I come from the world of education. We have this stuff all the time of like, here's what the general aim is, and then you construct things after that. So thanks, I appreciate that.
Councillor Clark, then Councillor Herbert.
Thanks for the clarification. I guess that's where what I was asking or trying to ask, and maybe it wasn't clear about next steps. And what I was getting at was if provincial policy has changed so that we've lost some of the teeth that we had before. I'm just wondering, we've got these guidelines, but if they're just guidelines, what are the mechanics, or what do we have if they choose to ignore the guidelines, or you've had a nice friendly conversation and you've moved forward on some things, but it's still not to the city's liking? Is there other opportunities, or how do we go about achieving something that we feel is more in line with where we want things to be if we've lost some of our previous teeth? Is there anything going forward through site plan or through a secondary plan where we can gain some of the leverage that we had before?
Through your worship, absolutely. As we move forward with new official plans, and more specifically new secondary plans, we definitely have the tools available there to achieve higher end urban design guidelines, and then take that on through a new zoning bylaw as well. So those are some of the tools that we could use. This is step one in order to get us there, in my opinion. And also I find that just in my experience, when you have that dialogue, you usually can meet somewhere, maybe not in the middle, but you can get your points across in terms of offering some real solutions and inexpensive solutions to achieve better design, better fit, and better compatibility with the surroundings. And this document will help us in those discussions. The biggest, when some of the site plan powers were taken away from us for some developments, like developments under 10 units or less, that hurt for certain infill projects. But this is a way to kind of get that back. And then we have other mechanisms as we move forward and improve the sort of regulatory environment of the municipality. But this is one of the first steps towards that, in my opinion.
If I can just, Councillor Herbert, sorry, I had you next. Go ahead.
I'll be short. Thank you. Well, thank you for the report. I guess when I read it, there was a lot of things that came to mind. I would have liked to see more site specifics that was mentioned, spots that you were going to work on. But I think your report has done exactly what it was supposed to do. Open the discussion for the whole council. A lot of good questions that need to be answered. It's a working document. There's nothing in stone here tonight that's going to take place. And I look forward to it as we develop this into the future for City of St. Thomas. So good job. And as we say, I think Lou Pompulo said it's a working document. There's nothing in stone here. So anyway, thank you very much.
And Lou, if I could just finish the same thing. Look, I know, I remember the day some 2.5 years ago, and you and I first said, hey, what would you think about urban design guidelines? And I believe my answer was, what? And you helped me understand where that would take us. And I know we did a number of public meetings on this, but what I haven't heard as part of this presentation is, what did others say about it? Was everybody agreeable about what we were presenting to them? I don't want tomorrow morning to hear from 5 developers to say, what did you guys do last night? Because I don't see it in the report, what the feedback was from commercial developers or home developers or anyone else. It's what did we get in our public dialogue?
Through you, Your Worship, I'll start to answer. Martina, if you can provide any more specifics, but the invitations, the stakeholders that we included in all our consultations included everybody that you just described, builders, developers, home builders. Many chose not to participate, and that's a decision there. Those that did participate, though, they were part of what Martina and her team used to create what the vision, the guiding principles are. So it was with their input.
Okay, great.
And the last open house we had shared that. So this document, if it's a shock to anybody in the community, developers, it's because of their, again, my opinion, their decision not to participate.
Okay, well, will anybody say, what did you do? It cost me more now to build in St. Thomas.
Through your worship, I don't think that that's a fair statement to say it's going to cost me more to build in St. Thomas. It may rethink how they build,
right?
And that could come at a cost. But I think it also, there's a cost to not building a well-designed city as well. So we have to factor both those things.
Agreed. Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Maybe I could just add to that as well, that in the report that we do, there is a section, I believe, on or at least it was in, there is an opportunity, if interested, where we have an engagement summary, that outlines all of the key themes and everything that we heard, and helps, and that's like a document that we have as a record to, the attendees and what are the key themes and how that was helped to inform the directions of the guidelines. And just maybe to also note that as a municipality, like for St. Thomas, you are not alone in this conundrum of what do we do with urban design when all of these elements are not in our control anymore, and all across Ontario, all municipalities have been going through those conversations internally and getting guidance on. And what we have heard kind of time over and over again is that we believe that urban design is important as a municipality. This is our standard, and these are our conversations, and that the urban design guidelines provide us the language, because not everyone is an urban designer or, understands all of the components in site development or public realm development, but this is the book to help us have a common language and to say that this is what we believe in as a municipality. And yes, there is that other part of how much can they meet the expectations of the city. But I think the city's growth, to be able to say we do value urban design and high quality, we see the value in high quality developments and high quality public and private realm, because that's what makes our communities more walkable, and the investors see that, and someone else, like, we attract more this kind of, economic drive or this kind of, other factors that are really important. And it starts with many factors, but one of those is the conversation about what you expect as a municipality. And this guideline is the start of that conversation. So, and that is something we have heard across Ontario.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where we are at the moment is, are we accepting this as information tonight? Or are we accepting this, are we adopting the urban guidelines tonight? I've had a couple of members say one or the other. So Councillor Baldwin-Sands?
I believe there was the third option that Councillor Peter said would be to defer this report.
Right.
If that is his wish, I will second the motion.
I would certainly make the motion that we defer it to staff to report back as to next steps.
Okay, so that would be for it to go back to staff and come back to us with fill in the blank that the mayor just left.
Well, a report as to, does everybody, I guess I'm going beyond what would be worded in a motion, but, I'm trusting that staff's going to recommend, if every staff department head recommends back that we proceed with the implementation, that's what I want to hear, Your Worship.
I have a mover and seconder. Further discussion on that motion?
Excuse me, Your Worship. I
Yeah.
do need to read the original motion so that
Okay.
then it can be deferred.
Okay, go ahead.
So the original motion that report PDO 225 relating to the St. Thomas Urban Guidelines final report be received for information, and further the council adopt the St. Thomas Citywide Urban Design Guidelines final report dated November 2024 as prepared by Dillon Consulting.
So then
Just need a mover and a seconder to
for
thank you.
that,
Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
okay. And now in conversation of that, I have a amended motion or a new motion, okay? And it's been moved and seconded, and it is to defer it back to staff to return back to council with more information. Is that a good enough, is that what we believe we've said? Okay. So on the motion to defer first, further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? I got 5, so I think we've deferred. So we'll come back to the original motion when it comes back to council. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. The next 4 items on the agenda refer to notices of decision from the Committee of Adjustment. Each of these decisions, the appeal deadline is February the 13th, 2025. First item relates to a notice of decision to permit an apartment building with independent entrances containing a maximum of 6 dwelling units at 96 Park Avenue. The next one is to permit maximum lot coverage of 36% for a new sunroom addition, 4.82 meters from the rear lot line at 44 Hickory Lane. The third is to permit a 3-season mudroom at 18 Erie Street. And the last one is to, the notice of decision is to refuse a minor variance for an existing front yard fence with a height of 1.886 meters at 26 Mandeville Road.
So we have a notice of appeal date for anyone wanting to appeal those, okay? So at this moment, council leaves them alone. Yep, okay. Next item.
Seeing no further items on the agenda, unless there are any items from the members under this committee, we'll now move into community engagement and services. First item is the NG 911 transfer payment. I have a motion that report FD 0125 relating to the Ministry of the Solicitor General Next Generation 911 Transition Funding Support be received for information, and further the council direct that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of the Solicitor General for Next Generation 911 Transition Funding Support. Moved by Councillor Wookie. Second by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Unless there are any further items from the members under this committee?
Councillor Woodkey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I suppose this could come under this committee or the next one, but I have a question for Mr. Bray about snow shoveling on weekends on pathways in the park system. And I'm hoping he could just come up and talk to us in the public about what happens on weekends when we have bad weather. I had somebody speak to me about that today, and Mr. Bray was very good and got back to me today, but I think it's very important that we all hear what he has to say. Thank you.
Mr. Bray, it's always important that we hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Mayor Preston. I appreciate that. Through you to Councillor Wookey. It's important to remember that recreational trails, we don't have a minimum maintenance service as Kevin does. 3 years ago, 2022, we did bring a report to council, the off-street recreational trail maintenance standard, which within that document it states for primarily financial reasons, we don't maintain trails on statutory holidays and weekends. We do them Monday to Friday religiously, which I believe is more than most municipalities. We did do a survey of surrounding communities, conservation authorities in the area, Chatham, Kent, Leamington, provide no winter maintenance. Other municipalities scale back their winter maintenance to designated recreational trails. We do all our recreational trails Monday to Friday. If we did we just can't decide to do Lake Margaret Trail. I'm just pulling that one out of the air. To be fair, we'd have to do most of the trails or all of them on the weekend. That would probably cost, 3 years ago, it was a little over $1,600 plus cost for associated salt and materials and equipment. So we're probably up to $2,000 a day if we were to maintain trails during winter events.
But we do Monday to Friday
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Councillor
Yes, we
Woodkey?
do.
Thanks. I just want to reiterate something that Mr. Bray said to me today in the email is that, it is in fair game, it's posted as use at your own risk. And so we're covered, legally, and people assume their responsibility. And I'll take that back to the folks who talked to me about it. But I appreciate the fact that it's done Monday to Friday. And of course, as it always is, it's a service level decision by us at budget time. And perhaps this is one that we do talk about later on sometime. But thank you very much for that explanation. I'll take that back to the folks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark?
Yeah, and just a reminder that we are lucky to have the option of the indoor walking track at the Joe Thornton. So if people are really earnest to get out on a snowy day, they can still do it inside.
Yeah. And of course, this council can set the clearing standards for any of its walkways at any time at budget time. Next item.
Seeing no further items for this committee, we'll now move into infrastructure and civic operations. First item relates to the First Avenue reconstruction Phase 2 tender award. I have a motion that report ES 0225 relating to the First Avenue reconstruction Phase 2 tender 2025-001 award be received for information, and further the council award the tender to Cassidy Construction London Limited in the amount of $1,410,159 excluding HST. Moved by Councillor Wookey, second by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments on the first F? Councillor Wookey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a real quick one for Mr. DeLebeck regarding the what's happening here and what might be happening at the corner of Fairview and Talbot. Are they going to be happening at the same time, or will they be staggered? And just so this is partly selfish, I have to tell you.
I asked Mr. DeLebeck the same question today, so I'm anxious to hear if the answer is
Yes, through Mayor Preston to Councillor Wookey, those two projects are staggered in time.
okay. Councillor Clark?
Just had a couple of people inquiring about whether or not there was going to be a Phase 3 and 4. They've noticed that First Ave from Wellington towards Elm Street is starting to get checkered and broken up a little bit, and whether or not the intent was to continue moving down the street with sewer and roads, or whether there was any kind of, whether it was on the plan for just the road maintenance, the surface.
Mr. Dillbeck? Through the mayor to Councillor Clark, this is phase 2 in terms of the sanitary trunk main. And so this phase is important in order to accommodate the interim flows from the Yarmouth Yards until we get Wharf 2. There was no phase 3 or 4 for the sanitary component. That's not to say that additional resurfacing along First Ave may occur. We are currently undertaking a detailed road condition assessment survey citywide this year, so that will help us reprioritize good streets, bad streets based on rideability.
Go ahead.
Supplementary then, the new sewers then going from Talbot up to Wellington, will it go up to Wellington, right? So then is the sewage then going to take a right hand turn and go down? Will it continue down Wellington, or will it continue down First Ave, I guess was their question.
Through the mayor to Councillor Clark, this section is the only section that has like a bottleneck where it's a smaller diameter on either side of it. So that's why we need to just deal with this section here.
Thank you. Further questions on this project? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Your worship, unless there are any further items from the members under infrastructure and civic operations, we'll now move into corporate governance and administration. First item relates to the 2024 corporate customer service update. I have a motion that reports CC 0125 relating to the 2024 corporate customer service update be received for information. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments?
Peters.
Councillor Peters, please go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to say thanks to staff, and I would encourage everyone in the public to utilize customer service at stthomas.ca because it works.
Yes. And I do see our numbers have now passed our best year ever with last year. So we're getting much more customer service done through customer service at stthomas.ca. Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. I too would like to say my thanks to the Customer Service Department. In addition to that, I also want to thank the Communications Department for putting this up on a regular basis on our social media website so that it does continue to inform the public of the service that's available and how the work actually gets done. Thank you.
And I'll add my thanks also to this group of councillors who on most of their social media requests also say, I'll tell you the answer, but also use customer service. I know I'm looking at Councillor Gibson because she's infamous now. It's responding, please use customer service to get so we get it. We get to hear about it too. Perfect. Next. So wait, so is there a vote? Yes, all in favor. Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item relates to a 2024 summary of council meetings, information relating to council meetings. I have a motion that reports CC 0225 relating to the council meetings 2024 summary be received for information. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Without seeing comments, I'm going to add that this is a topic of conversation among my peers. Certainly, we're recognized as being a council that gets a lot of stuff done, but they're amazed at how much we get done in a shorter period of time. If you look at the timing of some of these council meetings, most are under an hour. I have to say it's the workability among this council that gets that to be able to happen. And we seem to be leading the pack on how to do it and how to do it right. So thank you for all your work. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to a review of procedural bylaw 110-82. I have a motion that reports CC 0425 relating to a review of procedural bylaw 110-82 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to council vacancy declaration for this evening. I have a motion that report CC 0525 relating to council vacancy declaration be received for information, and further the council declare the office of councillor to be vacant in accordance with section 262 of the Municipal Act, and further the council fill the vacancy by appointment at a subsequent meeting of council. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments?
Peters.
Yes, Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think it would be helpful to the public to sort of, from your perspective, lay out what our next steps are in front of us to deal with the resignation of Councillor McCauley, please. Thanks.
Yeah, as the report has asked us, it would ask us to make a decision on holding a citywide election to replace the councillor, or for council to do as it is done long before this council and through this council also, to come up with a way of replacing the councillor through appointment. Tonight's report has to come to us to declare the position vacant, and then it is at a subsequent meeting, so as early as next week, this council can meet and discuss how it will take that up. The recommendation in the report is that we do go forward with an appointment, not an election, which I believe would cost over $100,000 for us to hold an election. So if we accept this report tonight at a subsequent meeting as early as next week possibly, or weeks following, we have 60 days to, after we accept the position as vacant and how will we replace, to go about doing so. So I would expect that we'll want to discuss it next week, but we'll see what we get on the agenda for next week. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. If there are no further items under this committee, council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole, as recorded in the minutes of this date, be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
No reports of committees. We now move into petitions and communications. First item this evening is a letter received from Integris Inc. regarding the company's 2025 to 2029 business plan. And the second item under petitions are copies of notices of applications for approval to expropriate land from the Ontario Ministry of Transportation relating to the Highway 3 expansion project in the vicinity of First Avenue and Joyce Street, and also Centennial Avenue near Highway 3. Your Worship, unless there are any further items of communication from the members, we'll now move into unfinished business of council.
Seeing none.
We'll now move into new business of council.
I only have one. I wanted to thank those of you that braved the cold Sunday morning for Groundhog Day in Westlake Evans Park. And I see Councillor Herbert trying to apologize very quickly for not being there, but we did post one picture of you from last year. Yep. So thank you all. By the way, St. Thomas Sally did not see her shadow. And so there an early spring coming our way.
Your Worship.
Yes.
Thanks. Can I raise another item, please?
Yes, you can, under new business. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks very much. As you're certainly aware, and I think we all are, that there's a lot of angst and discussion going on regarding tariff and tariff threats. It looks like just some recent news coming out right now that there may be a 30-day reprieve, but I don't want to get into an international political issue, but I'd just like to say, I'd say to everybody, like, when you can, if you can buy local, whether it's maple syrup or apple cider or local apples, support our market, be cognizant when you go to the grocery store of buying something that's manufactured and produced in Ontario or manufactured and produced in Canada. We can all do our part, and because it's not just it's so many sectors, and our own local economy is so dependent on that international integrated system, particularly in the automotive part side, that this is a big issue for us in St. Thomas. But if there's little ways that we can, as a community, help, please do so.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that, Councillor Peters. I know you and I spoke on it this afternoon and about 10 other phone calls or interviews today too. So buying local is the easiest thing we can all do. And working together with our local manufacturers and offering them what support this city can will continue on also. So. Any other items under new business? Seeing none?
We'll now move into bylaws. I have a motion that leave be granted to bring in one bylaw.
Peters.
Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the bylaw be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Madam Chair, may I have the first and only bylaw, please? Thank you.
The one and only bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on February the 3rd, 2025.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Oops, sorry. I rise and report the successful passing of the one bylaw.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the one bylaw be received and adopted. The same be read a third time, engrossed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No public notices or notices of motion this evening. There is a need to move into closed session. I have a motion that this meeting be closed to deal with a proposed or pending disposition of land, a position plan procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality, and a labor relations matter. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
As usual, before I call for the vote, I will share with those watching at home, streaming with us, those in the gallery watching us, we're about to move into closed session. We will not come back into open session except to accept the work done in closed and to adjourn for the evening. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and all those in favor of closed session. Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Your worship, at this time, I have a motion that council rise from closed session. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Baldwin-Sands. No further items under open session, your worship. I do have a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Clark.